What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Devy Royale YouTube channel. Today, we are talking through the 2025 running back class. So, we're taking a look at the 2025 NFL draft. We're trying to project these running backs forward. This is a fantastic class. There's been a lot of buzz about it. There's certainly some guys that are getting a lot of hype and getting touted as much better than this last class, which I think is true, at least on paper. We've said that about quite a few running back classes. So today we're going to be talking through my top 10 running backs. Now, this is a summer scouting perspective. This is not our rankings at the Devy Royale, which I know. So Kevin did a video like that recently where he talked about 2025 running backs from our rankings perspective. But now I go through and I summer scout and I put grades on all of these guys. I did do a quarterback video if you want to check that one out. And I'm going to be doing every position, including the defense, as the summer wears on. It'll probably get into the fall, but it'll still be summer scouting as we get through that. But I'm going to talk through RB 10 through 6 with a little less detail, and then the top 5 is going to be pretty detailed, and we talk about this great running back class on paper. So RB 10, Katron Allen, 5'11", 225, running back for Penn State. This is a kid, I'm not sure what to do with him because from an running back perspective, like just running the ball, I think that he's one of the better backs in the class, but I don't think that there's a ton of athleticism there. I think he's a fine athlete, but it's not someone that I think is going to blow you away if he does the testing, which is rare for a Penn State player. But when you compare him to his teammate, which we'll talk about in a little bit, he's certainly the less athletic one. He's also the more patient one. He's also the one that can set up blocks really well between the tackles. There are a lot of really good things about his film, which is why he lands inside my top 10. I wonder about the upside. Is he just going to be one of those first and second down backs that can get you some tough yards? Does he develop? Does he get a little bit faster? Does he develop the ability to run some outside stuff? I'm curious to see it. I think this Penn State attack is going to look a little bit different. I think it's going to be a little bit better with Andy Kotelnicki calling plays. We'll talk about a player that just came from that offense, and that's much later. So, to me, Katron Allen has every opportunity to vault up this list a little bit, but I think the upside is always going to be a little bit capped with him. RB9, Jordan James, the Oregon running back, 5'10", 205. This is a kid that if you toss on the Oregon film, I think you can make a case that James was better than Bucky Irving, who just, everyone's excited for Bucky Irving in Tampa Bay. And I think that he certainly was a good running back and showed more receiving upside than Jordan James has. But from a running perspective, he's definitely more efficient. I think he's got more burst. He's got more contact balance. I think one of the things that everyone panicked about with Bucky Irving is that he wasn't a very good athlete when we got to the combine. I don't think we're going to have that same panic with Jordan James. And I think that Jordan James could be regarded as one of the better backs in the Big Ten. Oregon is now in the Big Ten, so there is a lot of competition there. We're going to talk about a few more Big Ten running backs, but Jordan James could certainly pace the entire conference in rushing yards. I think he's going to be incredibly productive. There's not a ton of depth behind him at this point. I think they have a good running back room, but it's not the same as having Bucky Irving and Jordan James there. James is one of these guys. He runs like a bowling ball. I'm excited to see how he fares in a Big Ten schedule. I don't think he's gonna struggle. My one concern with him, he's 205 and he runs like he's 225. So we're gonna have to see if he can hold up for a full year or if he puts on some weight, maybe. But he's athletic. I'm excited to see what he can do. RB8, Omarion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina, 6'0", 220. So this is a bigger kid that has the weight already. But he's my RB8 because I think that while there's a ton of long speed, there's a ton of burst, there's a ton of contact balance, there's not a whole lot of receiving skills, and there's not a whole lot of really good footwork. I think his feet can be a little bit slow behind the line of scrimmage. I think from a patience perspective, you can see where he waits for blocks, but I wouldn't say that his footwork while that's happening is very good. I also don't think that he's very elusive in space. I think that he's very much so a straight line runner and a contact balanced runner. He kind of reminds me of Braylon Allen. I think there's more juice there. I think that he can certainly break off more long runs. He had a very, very productive year with Drake May. There were times where Omarion Hampton very much so helped Drake May in that they were able to move the ball because of him strictly. I think between the tackles, he's really good. I think that he can kick the ball outside and get the edge because he's so fast, but he's just not the most elusive guy in the world. So I'm a little bit worried about what this offense looks like without Drake May there. Is Max Johnson going to start? I certainly hope not. He's not very good, but um, to me, Omarion Hampton, I wouldn't say his upside is capped. I just want to see more. I want to see more of his receiving skill set. I want to see him make more guys miss in space. I think he can run through them for what it's worth, but these are college guys. That doesn't always work at the NFL level. So I think that maybe that's what prevents him from being inside that top five. Another guy that a lot of folks have inside the top five is Ollie Gordon, the running back from Oklahoma State, 6'2", 216, so a little wiry, a little thin for that height. He's down at RB7 for me. He's an interesting guy because I think he's a tough runner. I think he displays pretty good contact balance. I think he's a fine athlete. I think there's some long speed there. There's not a whole lot of elusiveness though. And so I'm curious to see what happens when he's put in space. Maybe he never has to. I think that his hands are only okay. He saw a lot of targets last year. He was very, very productive. He's going to be one of the best running backs in the college football game that comes out in a couple weeks here, because I think from a college running back perspective, he's really good. But he just there's something about him that reminds me of Chuba Hubbard, where it's like they're good straight line runners. There's not a lot of upside to be a three down guy at the NFL level, and so that pushes him down a little bit, but still a very good back. I hope that we see more from that. We talked about it on our Oklahoma State top 25 preview, but I think if you try to get him the ball more, I'm curious to see what happens. These players can get better. From the film, though, he's down at RB7 instead of inside that top five like most people have him. RB6 is Jaden Ott, 6'0", 210. Kid that goes to California is making a top six running back list, which is fun. It's exciting. He's a very, very fast player, but he's not just a fast player. I think he's probably the fastest player in this running back class, or close to it. He's got very long strides. He runs like a gazelle out there. But there's more than that. I don't see a whole lot of contact balance, but sometimes that doesn't matter with guys like this. I think of Devon Achan. I think of other really, really fast guys. At least he's over 200 pounds. And so I think that we're going to see some good film again in 2023 or 2024. I mean, the 2023 film was good. He shows good vision. I think that there's some patience with his runs, which you don't always see with these fast guys. We hope to see more as a receiver. He's got the receiving skill set. So I'm curious to see if they try to use him a little bit more. It's a California offense. They need to feed their best player. He is certainly their best player. But that speed is what speed kills. So if you have a running back that can break the game a little bit with how fast he is, he's always going to be a little bit higher in my rankings than others. So I love this kid. I think when I turned on the film, I expected just speed, and there's more to him than that. So I'm excited to see what he can do as well. RB5 is Nicholas Singleton. Nicholas Singleton, the other Penn State running back that I was talking about, 6'0", 226, 227, depending on where you look. He had a really good 2023 season. So 752 yards, averaged 4.4 carry, 8 touchdowns, though. But really where he took a step forward was his receiving skill set. So 26 receptions, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns. From a PFF advanced stat perspective, he wasn't that good. So he only had a 72.2 run grade. His yards after contact per attempt was pretty low compared to what his film suggests that he can be. His breakaway percent was down at 22.4%. His elusive rating was really bad. And so I think that there were times when Singleton flashed all of the upside that we saw from his 5-star profile. He's an elite athlete. So that's the number one thing. He's got elite athleticism, elite burst, and he's got a receiving profile. So those three things always give you a little bit of a boost when you're talking about this running back class. Now, I think the contact balance aspect of his game needs to get better. I think he needs to also run between the tackles a little bit more. He's never been a guy that is comfortable between the tackles. He's more of a bounce it outside or run an outside zone. I think that he can run an outside zone, but when you look at NFL trends, they're kind of moving away from this outside zone heavy attack. They're going back to this inside zone or gap scheme stuff because everything is cyclical in the NFL, right? So I do worry about what his upside is. He's I still think that the upside is there, and I think that, as I talked about with Katron Allen, Andy Kotelnicki coming over and calling plays is gonna be huge for him because he's able to get the most out of his running backs. I need to see him run between the tackles a little bit more. I need to see what his what if he's developed, because I think we've had a couple of years now of film where it's like, okay, I get the excitement. It's similar to another guy that we're going to talk about here shortly, but to me, this is a kid that when he puts it all together, he can be a three down back at the NFL level. He can be a top 12 dynasty running back if you're playing fantasy football. Like there's a ton of upside to his game. He just needs to put it all together. RB4, Quinshawn Judkins. I know this is a little low for some people, 60219, but incredibly productive. So 1,158 yards last year, 4.3 per carry, 15 touchdowns, 22 receptions, 149 yards, two touchdowns. So really, really productive. When you toss on the film, you see exactly what these stats indicate. So, 87.1 run grade, really, really good. 3.21 yards after contact per attempt. Also very good. Not the best. I think it definitely got worse from his freshman year. But what you see on the film too is that 27.5 breakaway percentage. That's not good. And his athleticism is certainly in question. 86.7 elusive rating, fine, but also not good. This isn't that I would say the sophomore film for Quinshon Judkins kind of highlighted my concerns with his freshman film, which makes me a little bit nervous. So, uh, good contact balance. I think that he can create missed force tackles. I think that's always there. Burst. So he does have that like first level burst, and he does have three down upside because of he's a pretty good receiver. I think that he can, be one of those dump off type of backs, but also he's got the size to handle a large workload. But athleticism, I just don't know if it's there. And so some people are going to have Quinton Judkins in their top two, top three. I just can't get there. I think that he's a very, very good back, but he's going to get caught from behind pretty consistently. I don't think that he's going to break these long runs. And I would even say as he moves over into the Big Ten, I'm curious to see what happens here because he's now teammates with a running back that we haven't yet talked about that is still on my list, who I think is better clearly. And also, just these Big Ten defenses can be a little bit different than even SEC defenses. Elusiveness is not there. I just don't think that he's creating a ton of missed force tackles from that perspective. I think that he can run through them, and I think that's exciting. And it's exciting film, but he's not going out in space and making guys miss all that much. And then vision. I think that Ole Miss or offense is created strictly to make the running back's life really easy. There aren't many situations where you need to display really good vision between the tackles. We're going to see what that looks like this year. I'm kind of projecting a little bit of a fall off well, obviously for his stats because he's sharing a backfield pretty consistently now. And I would say that he's RB2 at Ohio State. But I think that maybe we're going to see a little bit similar efficiency, maybe. That 4 yards per carry isn't very good, to be completely honest. And so if we see that again, does Quinshon Judkins go back to school and maybe take over that Ohio State backfield the year after Travion Henderson is gone? That could be what happens. That might be his best path forward. And then maybe, he learns how to run between the tackles a little bit better. He learns how to, make guys miss a little bit better. We'll see. I'm excited to see what he's able to do. I'm excited to watch this Ohio State offense because it's absolutely loaded. But I just don't think that he's as good as maybe some other people think. RB3 is Devin Neal. So Devin Neal, 5'11", 215. This might be high for some people. I don't always see Devin Neal in these top five lists, but super, super productive last year. 1,280 yards, average over six a carry, 16 touchdowns, 25 receptions, 217 yards, and a touchdown as well. We talked about this Andy Kotelnicki offense, and Devin Neal certainly benefited from being inside that offense. 88.9 run grade, 3.63 yards after contact per attempt, 47.7 breakaway percentage, which is really, really good. 113.1 elusive rating, also very good. So all of the metrics point to Devin Neal being a very, very good running back. He is a little bit older, but I don't think that matters a whole lot at this point. He's very elusive. He's got burst and speed, and he's got footwork. So those are three things that you're looking for in a high level running back. I think even if Devin Neal goes to a team where he is maybe a secondary back and he's kind of that change of pace back that gets 12 ish touches per game, you can almost guarantee that those touches are going to be efficient based on what he has shown on film in Kansas. His contact balance is only okay. I think that there are times when he shows off, like, oh, he can run through someone. There are other times when a cornerback can take him down at first contact. And so he's going to need to get a little bit stronger as a runner. I think he needs to be a little bit more patient too. He can kind of run himself out of big running lanes. He gets a little too antsy back there. And then the pass blocking perspective is just not very good for Devin Neal. I think he has a good receiving skill set, but I don't necessarily think that he's going to be on the field immediately if he has to, be that primary protector for that quarterback in the backfield. So this is a good player, and I've gone back and forth with him as my 2 or my 3, but my RB2, yeah, I think he deserves it. I think he deserves it. So let's talk about him. Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State, a little bit smaller. I do question the 5'9", 215. I think he's probably more like 5'8", 205 or close to it. He runs really tough though, so it's tough to tell on film. But I think Boise State might be juicing that up a little bit. Talk about productive. This is the most productive back in this class. 1,300 yards, over 6 per carry, 14 touchdowns, but 43 receptions, 569 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He had almost 2,000 all-purpose yards last year. And then you toss on you look at the advanced metrics: 94.6 run grade, 4.52 yards after contact per attempt, 40.6 breakaway percentage, so a little bit lower than Devin Neal, but 183.6 elusive rating. That is fantastic. That is one of, if not the best in the class, depending on where you have your qualifiers and whatnot. This kid is fantastic. However, I want to talk first about the weaknesses because I'll rave about the film here in a second. But the weaknesses, level of competition. So Genty played against Boise State level competition. So still really good, but definitely not what these other backs that we've talked about already have seen. Size is certainly a concern. I do get a little bit nervous for the 5'9", 205-ness of what I think his actual metrics are. I think this is the kid that we go to the combine or we're watching the combine and we see his measurables come in and we're very concerned about that. I'm just being pre-concerned about that. I'm gonna project that he's a little bit inflated when it comes to the listing there. And then the first level contact balance is not my favorite. The yards after contact per attempt, I think, indicate that there are a lot of broken tackles. I think that he does get hit with like arm tackles, and I think he can break the arm tackles. But if he's getting hit by a defensive lineman on the first level, I think he's probably going down. At least that's what I saw on the games that I watched. But as a receiver, when you talk like from a fantasy football perspective, I think you can make a case that Genty is RB1 simply because of the receiving skill set. He is very, very good. He can run routes downfield. He runs Texas routes. He runs just flare routes where he just gets the ball in space and goes. But he can also run a seam route and he can run like little out routes too. He's a very, very good receiver. So that's one of his strengths, especially compared to the rest of this class. His footwork is fantastic. He's got quick feet. I think there's a reason he forces so many missed tackles. He can do that in the backfield. I think that's where maybe my concern about that first level contact balance is inflated as well, because he's got such good footwork in the backfield that he's so elusive that, sometimes he's not running through guys because he's making them miss. Now, that's not always the case. I think that both of those things can be true. But from a burst perspective, it's all there. I think he's a good athlete, even if I do think he is a little bit smaller. Um, I've seen some crazy comps for him, and I do want to steer clear of those because I think that there's a chance that Genty takes a step down this year. But from the film that we've seen, he has a case to be RB1 next year. I think a lot of scouts do have him at RB1 and will be pretty comfortable doing that. But I just want to see a little bit more, and I want to see what he weighs in at. I want to see if he's 205 running against bad competition or if he's a true 215. So uh, Genty is going to get a lot of love. You're going to hear this name. You're going to see him all over the place. So get used to hearing that name. But my RB1 is still Travion Henderson, 5'10", 208. I'm not worried about the size on Travion Henderson. If anything, I'm worried a little bit about his durability compared to others. 926 yards last year, 5.9 per carry, 11 touchdowns. Also a receiving skill set, only 19 receptions, but 229 yards. He is dynamic with the ball in his hands. 89.9 run grade, so very, very good. 3.68 yards after contact per attempt, pretty good. More breakaway runs on a per snap basis than Ashton Genty, 44.3. But the elusive rating, that's always been kind of Travion Henderson's concern, 73.6. He's going to be a senior this year. And we've kind of seen what Travion Henderson is when he's healthy. I am concerned about that. So injuries goes into the weaknesses and elusiveness goes into the weaknesses. We just talked about those two things. Workhorse ability, I don't think that he's that anymore. I think that he's going to be one of those guys that gets maybe 60% of the work, and maybe you're happy with that because he's so efficient on a per touch basis. I'm excited to see how they deploy Quinshon and Travion Henderson, if only because I think this is going to keep Travion fresh. There were times when Ohio State had to go to Mayan Williams and Chip train them last year, and it was like, man, the difference in those two players compared to what Quinshon Jug or compared to what Travion Henderson was when he was on the field was pretty stark. But yeah, I'm excited to see if Henderson gets more or less work, or if they just continue kind of deploying how they did. He's an elite athlete. There's a reason that from a per touch basis, he's one of the better backs in the class. The burst is insane. And he has 3 down upside in that he can come onto the field, he can catch passes, and he can make great plays from that perspective. He's a good receiver. I don't necessarily think he's a great blocker from a receiving standpoint, but I do think that he can be on the field all 3 downs. Now, will he be on the field all 3 downs for every single snap? I don't think that's the case because of the injuries, because of that workhorse ability that I just talked about. But when you watch the film, his footwork is fantastic. He's become more patient. I think that he used to be really tough to run him inside. It was very similar to Nicholas Singleton, where he kicked everything outside, and that was kind of okay because he was getting the edge against everyone. So I'm curious to see if he's developed a little bit more from that perspective, or if Quinshon Judkins comes in and he's kind of that inside runner. They give all of Travion Henderson outside carries and things like that. The long speed's there. I think that the burst is just insane on this kid. I think he's probably going to end up being the most athletic back from like a relative athletic score perspective, if only because I think he will be a little bit heavier than Ashton Genty and some of these other guys, Jaden Ott, for example. So he's still my RB1. I know that's kind of a hot take at this point because he's been pushed down a lot of people's boards, but I think his upside is just massive. From a fantasy football perspective, I think he still can be an RB1 in Dynasty. So I'm excited to see what he can do in this Ohio State offense. That'll do it. That is my top 10 running back rankings. Let me know what you think. Did I miss on someone? I know guys like Jonah Coleman. I like Jonah Coleman a lot. Trevor Etienne. Donovan Edwards didn't make my list because I don't think the film's very good. He was outside of my top 10. Damian Martinez is another guy that I like a little bit, but I'm curious if you can win without athleticism, because I don't think he's a very good athlete. DJ Giddens. There's a ton of guys. There's other guys that I like, but we just haven't seen it all yet. So let me know what you think. Are you in on some of these guys? Are you out on some of these guys? Let us know. And before I get out of here, I do want to mention our Patreon. So patreon.com/Royale. We have rankings. We are testing a Devy and Dynasty combined trade calculator right now for patrons. We have overall rankings from both Devy, their combined overall rankings from our consensus rankings. We've got a ton of stuff, access to Discord. We've got Devy guides. We've got all of the stuff. So if you're feeling like supporting the channel, it's only $5 a month. Head to patreon.com/Royale. Thank you guys for watching. We will catch you next time.